Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. You know, yesterday or the day before, posted a video where Sony confirmed what I had been speculating for, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 years, which was that they are about 5 years behind Microsoft's strategy of, Game Pass and slowly but surely bringing their games over to PC and then expanding that towards a multi-platform. And of course, I was met with a lot of, uh, neither here nor there. But basically, I was called a fanboy for my reasonings, even though we had articles where the head of Sony was talking about going multi-platform. Um, he during a Q&A for Sony's quarter 3 2023 earnings, Sony president Hiroki Totoki, who is the current chairman of the gaming division after Jim Ryan announced his retirement, he spoke about how he was seeking to boost profits by putting more first party games on other platforms. And of course, the Sony ponies immediately were like, oh, he's only talking about PC. It doesn't count if it's only on PC. Which is exactly what the Xbox fanboys were saying years prior to that. Technically, it's not third party, it's PC, it's not a direct competitor. Blah, blah, blah. But to me, that always sounded like copium. Like, okay, sure, you can say that all you want, and sure, maybe it's not a traditional console that they're putting it on, but that's the beginning. And once they start seeing that revenue come in, it's like, oh, we're spending hundreds of millions of dollars on these titles, and they're stuck on this ecosystem, and they're not seeing huge profitability. And what if something flops, like Concord, right? They spent like $500 million on that game, only for it to like massively fail. I mean, massively fail, right? Um, so I was on here, kind of searching for on a future video. What I wanted to do is kind of break down um, PlayStation's evolution over the years and how they are slowly but surely becoming a third party. Um, and as I'm doing my research and looking up different interviews and videos, I decided to kind of compile everything by going on Chat GPT and seeing if it can, provide sources and stuff like that for me. And in doing so, ChatGPT decided it wanted to create a list of potential games that are going to be coming over to Xbox and Nintendo Switch. Now, what originally I had quoted or asked it to do was to list all of Sony owned properties that are currently on PC and Nintendo and include Helldivers 2, which has been announced for the Xbox. Those are all Sony owned properties. And ChatGPT went in and listed a bunch of games. There's four currently on the Switch that are owned by Sony, being co-published by Bandai Namco. And then we've got Helldivers 2, which has been announced for Xbox, and then a bunch of PC titles, right? But then ChatGPT forgot to include MLB The Show, which has a deal to put everything multi-platform, and that's a Sony-owned game. So I kind of prompted it like, hey, you forgot MLB The Show. And doing so, it then made up a new list. And in so, you know how ChatGPT does, it scours the internet and it comes up with an amalgamation of what games are coming to the Xbox and Nintendo Switch. Now, because the Switch 2 is out, I wanted to see what ChatGPT would then scour the internet for and potentially bring out for Switch 2. And this is what it came up with. And I really do believe that this is a very interesting list. And I wanted to know what you guys think. So let me go ahead here and bring up what I've been looking into. Here's ChatGPT. So yeah, so like I told it, more or less it was including games that would be either through cloud streaming for the Switch 2. And I said, hey, so what we've seen, Koei Tecmo and Bandai Namco both go on record and say that the Switch 2 is more capable than the PlayStation 4 and about as capable of the Xbox Series S, with the DLSS. So to kind of gauge that, it would be kind of in between PS4 Pro and Xbox Series S, something in between, right? And then ChatGPT prompts here, it says, that's an excellent point. If the Switch 2 is as powerful as the Xbox Series S or the PS4 Pro, then it could absolutely handle native versions of some of these PlayStation titles with a bit of optimization, especially considering the advances in hardware that have happened in the last few years. It's quite feasible that the Switch 2 could run games that are already playable on PS4 and Xbox Series S natively. So when it goes on to compare the hardwares, and then what would be needed for optimization for Switch 2 at either 1440p or 4K, of course with DLSS. You guys can read that. Now here it says games that could run natively on Switch 2 with some optimization: Horizon Zero Dawn, Spider-Man series, God of War 2018, The Last of Us Part 1 and 2. It says with the PS4 Pro version having some visual improvements, Switch 2 could run this game similarly and maintain decent graphical quality. Days Gone, this game could also runs well on PS4 Pro, so the Switch 2 could potentially manage it with minor adjustments to frame rates or resolution. MLB The Show, Death Stranding, with its relatively low resource graphical demands, it could definitely run well on Switch 2, and possible tweaks to the environment detail for better performance. And then it says here, so to update the list, this is the list that ChatGPT came up with while it scours everything that's been basically said on the internet, right? And then it uses an AI to compile a list. These are very interesting to me because I think this list is pretty potentially close to what we're going to be seeing on Xbox and on Nintendo coming in from Sony as a third party. Now, these games are already available on PC, and these are Sony-owned first-party titles that are already on Steam or Epic Games or GOG, etc. Sony-owned or published games officially released on Windows PC. So Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, Complete Edition, two of their biggest franchises, and we saw them pushing Lego Horizons onto the Switch, trying to expand that further to a bigger audience. God of War 2018, God of War Ragnarok as of May 2025, Marvel Spider-Man Remastered. I could totally see that coming over to Xbox. And I mean, it's already years old, and it's a huge franchise, and Sony has paid Marvel a crazy amount of money for the licensing. This could definitely make it over. And remember, these games were on PS4, so they could definitely run on Switch too. Marvel Spider-Man's Miles Morales. I bought that for one of the reasons that I got a PS5 was to play Spider-Man with the Miles Morales add-on. Marvel Spider-Man 2, that came out in January 2025. Now, I believe this game could probably run on Switch 2 if they optimized it. I don't think Sony might want to go that extra mile, but if they brought down the native resolution and then used DLSS to make it bigger, make the resolution higher, I should say, and maybe 30 frames per second, I could see Spider-Man 2 running on the Switch too. The Last of Us Part 1, Last of Us Part 2 Remastered, Days Gone, Death Stranding, Sackboy, Big Adventure, Returnal, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, Helldivers 2, Heavy Rain, Beyond 2, Souls, Detroit Become Human, Concrete Genie, Guns Up, Predator Hunting Grounds, and Destruction All-Stars. These are all Sony owned or published games. 24 titles are already on PC, guys. Sony's been third party for a long time. Oh, it doesn't... See, Chris actually said this to me the other day. He said, I don't really see the big deal about Helldivers 2 showing up on Xbox. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's one of the biggest hits of last year. And it's coming to Xbox. And it's owned by Sony. So, here we go with available on Nintendo Switch. Sony owned or published games released on Nintendo Switch. We've got Lego Horizon Adventures, MLB The Show series, which is 22 through 25, Patapon 1 and 2 Replay, and then Everybody's Golf Hot Shots. These are Sony owned. There's 4 Sony owned properties on Nintendo Switch. These used to be exclusives. They are no longer. These are games that Sony used to have as leaders, basically. Like Patapon was like huge for their portable consoles. That's people bought their portable consoles. These were system sellers, and now it's on Switch. Then it says available on Xbox One and Series X and S. These are Sony owned or published games released on Xbox Game Pass. digital stores, etc. And it says Helldivers 2 is going to be released 2025 cross-platform. MLB The Show, of course. Death Stranding, available on Xbox Series X and S via cloud streaming. It says Sony has a deal with Microsoft for cloud infrastructure. Now, I'm not sure if that one counts. You guys leave a comment below. Let me know what's going on with that, why ChatGPT chose it. Persona 5 Royal, Sony published Persona 5 on PlayStation, but Atlas published by Sony in Japan released Persona 5 on Xbox and PC as well. Guys, they've been doing this. Neo 1 and 2 published by Sony, Team Ninja for Xbox and PC. These games are not PlayStation exclusives. They're third party now. Nier Automata, Sony published in Japan, but also available on Xbox via Microsoft's partnership. This is current. And here comes this is the one that really rocked my world, because ChatGPT came up with the Switch 2 speculative list. And then it goes on to say, if Switch 2 has hardware similar to the Xbox Series S and PS4 Pro, which we all know Koei Tecmo and Bandai Namco have gone on record to say this is exactly the case. It says many of these Sony titles could run natively with optimizations for performance and resolution. And it goes a little bit deeper in here onto how exactly it could run. I love this. So it says Horizon Zero Dawn, with slight adjustments to the resolution and frame rate, Switch 2 could run this natively. Spider-Man series, similar to PS4 Pro, it could run smoothly at 30 frames per second and some scaling on Switch 2. God of War 2018, easily possible with 30 frames per second and 1080p or 1440p resolution. The Last of Us Part 1 and 2, 30 frames and 1080p performance could be achievable. Death Stranding runs well on PS4, so it could be optimized for Switch 2. Days Gone should run on Switch 2 with minor tweaks to visuals. MLB The Show, native versions would be likely on Switch 2. That makes sense. It's already on Switch. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, depending on optimization, Switch 2 could run it with reduced graphical settings. Returnal, likely possible with some frame rate and resolution adjustments. And then Helldivers 2 could run smoothly on Switch 2 and make it cross-platform. Helldivers 2 doesn't even need to be optimized, really, from what it says here. It could just, bang, throw in a 1080p, 60 frames per second version of Helldivers 2 on Switch 2. I'll double dip, man. I already played the crap out of this thing on PC. I will play it again. I'm actually a big fan of Splitgate 2, and it's getting a reboot, a soft reset. That thing just fell in the background, the lights. But yeah, anyway, and then it finishes off here. It says, this should cover the speculation about Switch 2 being capable of running native versions of these games if the hardware supports it. It's still speculative, but with the hardware power in mind, it's definitely feasible with optimizations. Let me know if you'd like to tweak any details or go further into technical side of things. And I think I will play a little bit more with this list, just to kind of see exactly what ChatGPT thinks that would be necessary to get some of these games to run. But it lists 10 out of really the 24, pretty much 10 out of the 24 games that were up there as potentially hitting Switch 2. And if those games could potentially hit Switch 2, I could see every single one of those hitting the Xbox as well, which would, by default, whether the Sony fanboys want to admit it or not, it would by default make the PlayStation a box that no longer really has exclusives, much like Xbox, right? Which is what all the Sony ponies were cracking up about. And they were like, crapping all over the Xbox fans because you guys lost all your exclusives. And now look at you. Here we are. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What do you guys think about this list? Switch 2 speculative? Like, that's real interesting. I mean, with the Steam, no pun intended, that Nintendo has had going with the sales, it'd be kind of a no-brainer, right? For Sony to kind of take these older titles from 2018 at this point. That's almost, 6, 7 years, 8 years ago almost. So they lose nothing and they gain an entirely new audience. Make it portable. I think it's a win-win for Nintendo fans. And and as we know, in Japan, Nintendo has a foothold there that Sony just can't penetrate when it comes to handhelds. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining me here. Thanks to the new subs. I got 3 of you guys to watch the last video. Really appreciate it. I posted a tribute video to Hulk Hogan. I know he's a controversial figure out there, but controversies aside, I put a little tribute video of every single appearance that Hulk Hogan has had over the years in video games, and that you guys can find the last video that I made right there, and then the Sony one right there. Click on them, hit that like button, subscribe, leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think about this list. As always, I want to thank you guys for joining here at Starflag Media. I'll catch you guys in the next video.